Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Whisper Zone. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. Story 1. The night my world changed forever. I was standing alone on Denali's icy slopes, watching the strangest aurora I'd ever seen in my 15 years as a park ranger. Something was wrong with those lights. They weren't the usual green ribbons I was used to. These were an eerie blue-green, like the color of glacier ice in deep caves, and they seemed to be watching me. I should introduce myself. My name is James Morrison, and I'm a ranger at Denali National Park in Alaska. Before this job, I was a Marine Scout sniper, but that feels like a lifetime ago now. These days I spend my time keeping visitors safe and tracking animals through some of the most beautiful and dangerous wilderness in America. The silver locket in my pocket feels heavy as I adjust my thick winter coat. It was Sarah's, my wife. Cancer took her 2 years ago, but I still carry her close to my heart. She loved this park as much as I do, or at least as much as I used to. The temperature gauge on my watch reads 40 degrees, cold enough to freeze your eyelashes. The snow crunches under my boots as I make my patrol rounds, checking for any crazy climbers who might have ignored the winter warnings. Out here, the nearest help is 50 miles away, and with the mountains blocking radio signals, you're pretty much on your own. A wolf howls in the distance, the sound bouncing off the massive ice walls around me. But something about that howl makes the hair on my neck stand up. In all my years here, I've never heard a wolf sound scared. I pull out my radio anyway, trying to reach base camp. Morrison to base, checking in. All I get back is static and something else. A whisper. No, more like chanting, but in a language I've never heard before. The old Inuit man's warning from last week keeps playing in my head. I'd laughed it off then, all that talk about ice spirits and staying away from certain parts of the glacier. We get that kind of thing a lot from the locals. But now, watching these weird lights dance across the sky and feeling the temperature drop even lower, I'm not laughing anymore. I check my compass out of habit, something I've done thousands of times. But tonight, the needle spins wildly, like it's dancing to some crazy tune only it can hear. That's when I see it, a shadow moving across the glacier wall, a big shadow. But when I shine my flashlight there, nothing's casting it. The radio crackles to life in my hand, making me jump. Through the static, I hear a voice that stops my heart cold. It sounds exactly like Sarah. James, help me. I know it can't be her. I know she's gone. But in that moment, standing alone in the Arctic night with those strange lights overhead, and that impossible shadow on the ice, I realize something that chills me more than any cold ever could. Something is very, very wrong in my park, and I'm the only one out here to face it. My fingers touch Sarah's locket again as I take a deep breath. Whatever's happening, whatever's out there, I'm going to find out. It's my job to keep people safe in this park, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, even if it kills me. Little did I know then just how close that last thought would come to being true. The next morning, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The strange lights were gone, but the air felt different, heavier somehow, like right before a big storm. I was doing my usual morning check of the climbing routes when I saw fresh tracks in the snow. Not animal tracks, human footprints. 3 sets of them heading up toward the glacier. My heart sank. Nobody was supposed to be up here this time of year. Base, this is Morrison, I called into my radio. We've got unauthorized climbers on. The north face, over, static. Just like last night, great. I followed the tracks, my old military training kicking in. They were fresh, maybe 6 hours old. The climbers must have started in the dark. Never a smart move in Denali. As I got higher, I noticed something odd. The tracks kept going, but there were no rest spots, no signs of them stopping to check their gear or take a break. Even experienced climbers need to rest in this thin air. That's when I saw the first splash of red in the snow. My stomach twisted as I got closer. Blood. Not much, but enough to worry me. Next to it was a torn piece of orange fabric, definitely from a climbing jacket. Expensive gear, the kind serious climbers use. I picked up my pace following the trail. The wind was picking up, and the temperature was dropping fast. Way too fast for a normal day, even in Denali. My digital thermometer showed it had dropped 20 degrees in just minutes. Then I saw the tents, or what was left of them. 3 high-end winter tents completely shredded. Not torn or blown apart by wind. Shredded, like something had ripped, through them with incredible force. Sleeping bags were scattered everywhere, also torn to pieces. More blood in the snow, but not enough for anyone to have died here. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing off the ice walls. "This is Park Ranger Morrison. Is anyone here?" The echo came back wrong. Instead of my words, I heard what sounded like laughter. No, more like crying. But it wasn't coming from any direction I could point to. It seemed to come from the ice itself. I found their gear scattered around the campsite. High-end cameras, satellite phones, all dead, and climbing equipment. Everything was frozen solid, covered in a thick layer of ice. But it hadn't snowed, and there hadn't been any rain. It was like everything had flash frozen in an instant. That's when I saw the footprints, not the climber's boots this time. These were different. Huge. At first I thought they might be bear tracks, but I've seen every kind of bear print there is. These were something else. They were nearly 3 feet long, with marks that looked like claws. But no bear has claws that big, and they seemed to appear and disappear randomly, like whatever made them could walk 10 steps and vanish, then reappear 50 feet away. My hands were shaking as I took photos with my phone. Not from the cold. I was used to that. No, this was fear. Pure, basic fear, the kind that goes right down to your bones. I heard a crack behind me and spun around, my hand going to the bear spray on my belt. Nothing there. But in the ice wall next to the campsite, I saw something that made my blood run. Cold. A reflection. But not mine. In the smooth surface of the glacier, I saw 3 people walking. They were wearing the same kind of gear that was scattered around the campsite. But when I turned around, there was nobody there. When I looked back at the ice, the reflections were still moving. Their faces twisted in terror, running from something I couldn't see. The radio on my belt suddenly screamed to life with static, making me jump. Through the noise, I heard voices. Not Sarah's this time, but the voices of what sounded like multiple people, all talking at once in different languages. Some were crying, some were screaming, some were begging. Then everything went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a weight on your chest. That's when I noticed all the ravens that usually hang around the glacier were gone. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen a single animal since I started following those tracks. In Alaska, that's never a good sign. When the animals disappear, it usually means something dangerous is around. But what could scare away everything? Even the ravens. I took one last look at the campsite, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The shredded tents, the frozen gear, those impossible footprints, and the reflections that couldn't be real. None of it added up. As I turned to head back and radio for a search team, hoping the radio would work this time, the temperature dropped another 20 degrees in seconds. My breath turned to ice crystals in front of my face. And then I heard, Dimnisi, a sound that didn't belong in this world. Like ice cracking, but with a deep rumbling growl underneath. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Something was out there. Something that shouldn't exist. And I had a horrible feeling those 3 climbers had found it first. Back at the ranger station, nobody wanted to believe what I'd found. But the photos on my phone didn't lie, even if they couldn't explain everything. I'd seen 3 missing climbers, said Mike, my supervisor, spreading out a map on the table. And you say the campsite was frozen? Like someone had sprayed it with liquid nitrogen, I explained. And those footprints. That's when Tom, one of our senior rangers, walked in with a thick folder. His face was pale. You guys need to see this. The folder was full of old reports, missing climber cases from the past 40 years. As we spread them out, my stomach turned. The patterns were exactly the same. Strange weather, equipment found frozen solid, weird tracks in the snow, and all of them happened in the same area of the park. Why didn't anyone connect these before? I asked, flipping through yellowed pages. They did, Tom said quietly. But nobody wanted to admit it. Look at this. He pulled out an old black and white photo. It showed an old Inuit man standing with rangers from the 1980s. On the wall behind them was a drawing. Something tall and thin, made of ice, with long claws. The locals have been warning us for generations, Tom said. They call this area the Cold One's hunting ground. They say it's home to something ancient, something that wakes up every few years when the aurora turns blue-green. Just then my radio crackled. Morrison! It was Sarah's voice again. But this time I wasn't the only one who heard it. Mike and Tom froze, staring at my belt. That's impossible, Mike whispered. I went to Sarah's funeral. The voice changed, becoming deeper, older. It spoke in a language none of us knew. Then we heard screaming, the kind of scream that haunts your dreams. We need to mount a rescue mission, I said, standing up. Those climbers might still be alive. Mike shook his head. It's too dangerous. The weather report shows a massive storm coming in. We'd be risking more lives. Then I'll go alone. James, no. I'm the best tracker you've got, I said, touching Zarir's locket. And I've seen what's out there, sort of. I've got the best chance. They couldn't argue with that. Within an hour, I was geared up and heading back out. This time, I wasn't just carrying my usual gear. I had a satellite phone, even though the last ones had failed, emergency flares, and enough supplies for 3 days. The sun was setting as I reached the shredded campsite again. The temperature was already dropping, but this time I was ready for it. What I wasn't ready for was what I saw in the ice walls. The reflections were back, but different now. I saw people walking through the ice like it was a window to another time. Some wore modern climbing gear. Others wore clothes from different decades. All of them looked terrified. That's when I noticed something about the ice walls themselves. There were patterns in them, symbols carved deep into the glacier. They looked ancient, forming circles and spirals that seemed to go on forever. My radio suddenly picked up a real signal. Base to Morrison. We've got another problem. 2 more climbers just reported seeing something on the north face. They said it was like the ice itself was moving, standing up. They're not making much sense, but they're headed your way. Perfect. More people walking right into danger. I grabbed my gear and started moving faster, following the original tracks. The new climbers had to be somewhere ahead. Maybe I could reach them before. That's when I saw it. Not in a reflection this time. Not as a shadow. It was standing on a ridge about 100 yards away, 12 feet tall if it was an inch. Its body looked like it was made of ice, but ice that moved like muscle. Long arms ended in claws that could easily shred a tent, or a person. Its face, I still have nightmares about its face. It looked almost human, but stretched and wrong, with too many teeth and eyes that glowed that same blue-green as the aurora. It saw me too. Those eyes locked onto mine, and in my head I heard voices. Hundreds of voices, all screaming. The thing smiled, and then it stepped backward and just melted into the glacier wall, disappearing like it had never been there. But I could feel, watching me, from everywhere, from inside the ice itself. I heard new screams then, real ones coming from up ahead. The other climbers. I started running. The sun had set completely now, and that strange aurora was back, painting everything in that sick blue-green light. The temperature was falling so fast my gear was starting to crack. As I ran, I realized something that made my blood freeze colder than any ice could. This wasn't just a hunt anymore, it was playing with us, and I was running right into its trap. I found the 2 new climbers half a mile ahead. They were alive but barely moving, huddled behind an ice boulder. Their faces were white with fear. Something's following us, one of them whispered. Her name was Lisa. It looked like my Brother, but Danny's been dead for 5 years. The other climber, Mark, couldn't even speak. He just pointed at the ice wall behind me. I turned slowly. In the smooth surface, I saw reflections of people walking, dozens of them. But they weren't random climbers this time. I recognized them. Sarah was there, smiling sadly, and my old Marine buddy Pete, who died in Afghanistan. Everyone I'd ever lost, all walking through the ice like it was a window to somewhere else. My radio crackled. "Morrison," it was Mike from base. "We're coming up, Tom, Jenny, and I. Your GPS signal shows you're near the old cave system, the one from the native legends." "No!" I shouted into the radio. "Stay back! It's not safe!" The radio died, but I heard voices anyway, echoing off the ice walls. They sounded like my friends from the ranger station calling for help. "That's not them," I told the climbers. "Whatever you hear, whatever you see, it's not real. It's trying to trick us." A wind picked up, but it wasn't natural. It swirled around us like a tornado made of ice crystals, getting stronger and stronger. The temperature dropped so fast our breath froze solid and fell to the ground like tiny glass marbles. Then we saw it again. The thing from the ice. But this time it wasn't alone. 3 more shapes rose up from the glacier. They looked like people, made of ice but wrong, twisted and broken, with too many joints and faces frozen in screams. With horror, I realized they were the missing climbers from the shredded tents. Whatever this thing was, it had changed them. "Run!" I yelled at Lisa and Mark. "Head straight down! Don't stop for anything!" They ran. I pulled out my flare gun and fired. The red light lit up everything, and for a second I saw the truth about the glacier. The whole thing was like a giant ice cage, full of frozen bodies, hundreds of them collected over who knows how many years. The main creature, the Wendigo, I remembered from the old stories. It moved like lightning. 1 second it was 50 feet away, the next it was right in front of me. Up close, I could see right through its ice-like skin to the darkness inside. It reached for me with those terrible claws, but I dove and rolled, my military training kicking in. The ice-cold wind was so strong now I could barely stand. "James," I heard Sarah's voice again, but it was different this time, coming from the Wendigo's mouth. "Why did you let me die alone?" My heart felt like it was being crushed. I wanted to scream, to run, to give up, but I grabbed Sarah's locket instead, holding it tight. "You're not her," I growled. That's when I heard real voices. Mike, Tom, and Jenny coming up the slope. They'd really come despite my warning. "Stay back," I tried to shout, but the wind took my words away. The Wendigo turned its head toward them, that horrible smile spreading across its face again. Then it did something I'll never forget. It shattered into 1,000 pieces of ice, each shard flying through the air like bullets. When they hit the ground, they formed 3 more Wendigos, each one heading for my friends. What happened next still gives me nightmares. Jenny was the first to go. The thing touched her and she just froze. Not like normal freezing. Her skin turned to ice, clear as glass, and then she shattered. Tom tried to run, but another Wendigo melted into the ground and came up under his feet like a shark made of ice. Mike almost made it. He was the toughest of us all. But when the third Wendigo showed him visions of his dead daughter, he hesitated for just a second. That's all it took. I was alone now. Me against the original Wendigo, with my friend's frozen screams still echoing off the ice walls. That's when I saw it. The cave entrance behind the creature. The symbols carved around it were glowing that same blue-green as the aurora. This was where it all started, where the Wendigo came from. I had 1 flare left. The thing was between me and the cave, showing me more visions of Sarah, trying to break my mind with guilt and grief. But this time, when I touched the silver locket, something different happened. The Wendigo flinched, and suddenly, I knew what I had to do. I just hoped I could survive long enough to do it. I held Sarah's locket tight in my frozen fingers. The Wendigo was circling me now, its ice-clear body reflecting the strange aurora above. Every few seconds, it would change shapes, becoming someone I'd lost. Sarah, Mike, Jenny, Tom, each face twisted with that same horrible smile. But I finally understood something. The locket wasn't just silver. It was Sarah's love, made real. And this ancient ice spirit, couldn't stand to look at it. "You feed on grief," I said, my voice shaking from cold and fear. "On guilt, on loss. That's why you show us the people we've lost. You make us weak with sadness so you can freeze us and add us to your collection." The Wendigo stopped shifting shapes. It stood there, 12 feet of ancient ice and hatred, and spoke with a voice like cracking glaciers. "Clever human. But knowing doesn't save you." They all knew in the end. Before they froze, I had to get to that cave. The glowing symbols around its entrance were the same ones carved all over the glacier. This was its lair, where it had first been trapped, by the native people who used to live here. Maybe where it could be trapped again. But my body was giving out. The cold was so intense that my gear was cracking, splitting apart. Ice was forming inside my clothes, inside my lungs. Each breath felt like swallowing glass. The Wendigo lunged, faster than anything that big should move. I dove to the side, but its claws caught my left leg. The pain was unreal, like being stabbed with 1,000 ice needles. My leg froze solid instantly from boot to knee. I screamed and fell, the locket flying from my hand. It landed in the snow near the cave entrance. The Wendigo laughed, a sound like an avalanche. "Now you'll join them, join her, forever in the ice." It reached for me with those terrible claws, but I had one last trick, one last flare in my frozen hand. I waited until it was right above me, its face inches from mine, ice breath freezing my tears to my face. Then I fired the flare straight up into its chest. The Wendigo screamed. The red-hot flare melted right through it, making it stagger back. I crawled toward the locket, dragging my frozen leg, leaving a trail of blood on the ice. That's when I saw them, all of them, in the ice walls of the cave. Hundreds of bodies, perfectly preserved. The Wendigo's collection from over the centuries. And in the very back, a dark shape, bigger than the others. Another Wendigo, but ancient, frozen solid. The original one. The father of the thing attacking me. The Wendigo was recovering, its ice body healing. I had seconds at most. I grabbed the locket and pulled myself up against the cave wall. "Sarah," I whispered, "help me." The Wendigo charged, roaring with all the voices of its victims. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I held up the locket, and something impossible happened. The silver caught the light of the aurora and reflected it, but changed. Instead of blue-green, it shot out pure white light, like concentrated moonlight. When it hit the Wendigo, the creature shrieked. The sound shook the whole glacier. Cracks appeared in the ice above us. The Wendigo tried to charge again, but the light from the locket was holding it back. "You're not taking anyone else," I said, and smashed the locket against the cave wall. The silver shattered, but the light exploded outward like a star going. "Nova." The Wendigo screamed one last time, and the glacier answered. The whole cave ceiling came down. Tons of ancient ice crashed between me and the creature. I rolled out of the cave just as the entrance collapsed, burying everything. The Wendigo, its collection, and the ancient one in the back. I lay there in the snow, my leg frozen solid, watching the aurora fade back to normal green. The unnatural cold began to lift. Somewhere in the distance, I heard birds starting to sing again. My radio crackled. Real voices this time. Rescue teams responding to the emergency signals. I lost my left leg to the frost. The doctors said it was the worst case of frostbite they'd ever seen. But I know it wasn't frostbite. Just like I know the Wendigo isn't really dead. Nothing that ancient ever really dies. I retired from the ranger service after that night. Couldn't really climb mountains with one leg anyway. But I bought a small cabin with a view of the glacier. Every night I watch the aurora, looking for that blue-green color. And I keep track of the weather patterns, the missing person reports. Just in case, because the ice didn't kill the Wendigo. It only trapped it. Like it was trapped before. And somewhere deep in that glacier, in the darkness under tons of ancient ice, something is waiting. Healing. Growing strong again. Waiting for The day when the ice finally thaws. Sarah's locket is gone, but sometimes, on cold nights when the aurora dances, I swear I can feel her watching over me, protecting me still. And I know that love, real love, is stronger than any ancient ice spirit, even if that spirit is just waiting to prove me wrong. The weather report on my desk shows exactly what I've been afraid of. 3 straight weeks of unusually warm temperatures in Denali. The glacier is melting faster than anyone's seen before. I sit in my cabin, looking out the window at the mountain I used to patrol. My artificial leg is propped against the wall. I only wear it when I have to go into town. The old-timers there still call me Ranger Morrison, even though I haven't worn the uniform in a year. The TV is playing in the background, some scientist talking about climate change and melting glaciers. But he doesn't know what I know. He hasn't seen what's frozen in that ice. My phone rings. It's Tom's wife, Karen. James, are you watching the news? About the glacier? Yeah. No. About the missing hikers. 2 of them up near the old cave. Site. They're saying it's bears, but... Her voice shakes. The rangers found their equipment. Everything was frozen solid in the middle of summer. My hands start to shake. I look up at the mountain again, and for a second I swear I see something. Moving on the ice wall. Something tall and thin, like a shadow made of frost. The aurora forecast sits next to the weather report. They're predicting unusual activity tonight. The scientists are excited about it. They don't understand what those blue-green lights mean. Pick up my satellite phone, the emergency one I keep charged all the time, and call Mike's replacement at the ranger station. Phillips, this is Morrison. Lock down the north face, all of it. Don't let anyone up there. But it's peak season. Trust me, please. Whatever you do, don't let anyone near that cave. Especially not at night. Especially not when the lights are dancing. After I hang up, I sit in my chair and watch the sun set behind the mountain. The temperature outside my cabin drops 20 degrees in minutes. Not natural. Not for summer. In my pocket, I touch the small piece of silver I found in the snow last week, right where the cave entrance used to be. Just a tiny shard from Sarah's locket, but somehow it survived. The radio on my desk, the one I keep just in case, crackles to life. Through the static, I hear voices, crying, screaming, begging. New voices. I look at my artificial leg, remembering the pain, the cold, the horror of that night. Any sane person would run, move to Florida, never look back. But I can't, because I'm the only one who knows the truth. The only one who's faced it and lived. The only one who knows how to fight it. I strap on my leg and start packing my old Ranger. Gear, heavy coat, emergency flares, first aid kit, and that small piece of silver from Sarah's locket. The Wendigo is waking up. The ice is melting. And somewhere in that glacier, something ancient and hungry is breaking free. Time to go back to work. Someone has to protect these mountains, even if it's just a one-legged ex-ranger who's seen too much. Even if it kills me this time, because if I don't, that thing in the ice will keep hunting, keep killing, keep collecting, forever. The sun sets completely, and the first hints of aurora appear in the sky. They're blue-green. God help us all. Story 2. The rocks moved last night. I know how that sounds, but after 23 years as a park ranger at Joshua Tree, I've learned to trust my eyes. Something's different about the stone formation near Indian Cove, the one we call the, Sleeping Giant. Its hand wasn't reaching out like that yesterday. My name is Daniel Walker, and at 51 years old, I thought I'd seen everything these desert lands could throw at me. Rattlesnakes in toilet paper rolls, lost kids in caves, even the occasional mountain lion stalking campers. But lately, things have been different. It started 3 weeks ago when Mary Thompson, a tourist from San Diego, went missing. She'd told her husband she was going for a quick walk to photograph the sunset. They found her camera the next morning, lying in the sand near Split Rock. But Mary, she was gone without a trace. I remember standing there in the harsh morning light, looking at her footprints in the sand. They just stopped, like she'd been plucked right off the ground. The official report says she probably got lost, maybe fell into one of the deeper crevices we haven't mapped yet. But I was there when we did the search. No body, no blood, no torn clothing, nothing. Just those footprints that ended in the middle of nowhere. Today's patrol started like any other. I checked my gear, radio, the clunky department-issued one that only works half the time, canteen, first aid kit, and my trusty mag light. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the sky pink, and the air still had that crisp desert chill that always disappears by noon. "Walker, you copy?" The radio crackled with Bob Henderson's voice from the main station. "Copy, Bob." "Starting. My rounds at Indian Cove." "Roger that." "Hey, we got another report about weird noises near Jumbo Rock's campground. Probably just coyotes, but check it out if you're in the area. Weird noises. That's what they all say at first. Like the Collins family last week who swore they heard grinding sounds like stone against stone all night long. Or the college kids who came running to my station, swearing the rocks were breathing. I drove my patrol jeep along the dusty park road, the old vehicle bouncing over every bump and dip. The morning light was playing tricks with the shadows, making the rock formations look like they were stretching, reaching for the sky. I've seen these same rocks thousands of times, given hundreds of tours, told all the usual stories about how wind and rain shaped them over millions of years. But something feels wrong now. The shapes seem different, like furniture moved slightly in a dark room. You can't quite put your finger on what's changed, but you know something has. I pulled up to the Indian Cove parking area and grabbed my notebook. 3 more visitors had reported missing items in the past week. Nothing valuable, just personal stuff. A worn baseball cap, a child stuffed animal, an old journal. All disappeared without explanation. The air felt heavy as I walked toward the sleeping giant formation. The rocks towered above me, casting long shadows in the morning light. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach turn. There, in the rough surface of the stone, were 5 deep grooves. They looked exactly like finger marks, as if something huge had dragged its hand across the rock face. I reached out to touch one of the grooves. The stone was warm, much warmer than it should have been in the cool morning air. And underneath, my fingers so faint I almost thought I imagined it, I felt a pulse, like a heartbeat in the stone. That's when my radio crackled again. Through the static, I heard Bob's voice. "Walker, we've got another missing person report, tourist near Split Rock. Same story. They just disappeared." I looked up at the towering rocks around me. For the first time in all my years here, I felt like they were looking back. Something is awakening in Joshua Tree National Park. Something old. Something that lives in the stone. And I'm starting to think those missing people, they didn't just wander off into the desert. They were taken. I couldn't sleep that night. Those warm finger marks in the rock kept floating through my mind. At sunrise, I drove back to Indian Cove, but this time I brought my camera. If something strange was happening, I needed proof. The morning was quiet, too quiet. Usually you'd hear birds singing or lizards scurrying across the rocks. But today, there was nothing. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. I walked up to the rock wall where I'd seen the finger marks yesterday. They were gone. Not faded or worn away. Just gone, like they'd never been there at all. But something else caught my eye. About 20 feet up the rock face was a pattern I'd never noticed before. "That's impossible," I whispered to myself. I'd been past this spot hundreds of times, given dozens of tours here. But there it was, an ancient petroglyph. Some kind of drawing carved into the stone. Showed a bunch of stick figures bowing down to what looked like a giant made of squares and triangles. I snapped some photos and reached for my radio. "Bob, you there?" Static. "Bob, do you copy?" More static. Great. The radio was acting up again. I'd have to show him the pictures later. That's when I heard it. A sound like someone dragging furniture across a floor, but deeper, coming from somewhere inside the rocks. The ground under my feet trembled slightly. I turned slowly and my heart nearly stopped. The boulder behind me, a huge round one that had always reminded me of a sleeping cat, it wasn't round anymore. It had edges now, sharp ones like Someone had taken a giant knife and cut into it overnight. As I stood there staring, a shadow fell over me. But that was wrong. The sun was behind me. The shadow shouldn't be. I looked up. The sleeping giant formation wasn't sleeping anymore. What had been a vague, human-like shape in the rocks now had definite features. A nose, a chin, and eyes. Deep holes in the stone that hadn't been there yesterday. They were looking right at me. My legs wanted to run, but years of ranger training kept me steady. "Hello?" I called out, feeling silly talking to a rock, but something in my gut told me I needed to try. The grinding sound came again, louder this way. Small pebbles rolled down the rock face as the giant's mouth, just a crack in the stone yesterday, slowly opened wider. I backed away, camera forgotten in my shaking hands. That's when I bumped into someone. "You shouldn't be here, Ranger." "Walker." I spun around. An old man stood there, Tommy Red Cloud, one of the local tribe's elders. I'd known him for years, but I'd never seen him look so serious. "Tommy, what are you doing out here?" He didn't take his eyes off the rock formation. "The old ones are waking up. The stone spirits. We tried to warn your people when they first made this place a park. Some places shouldn't be disturbed. Stone. Spirits?" I remembered the missing people, the weird marks, the changed shapes. "Tommy, what's really going on here?" He grabbed my arm. His hand was shaking. "They're called the Gogim, the Stone Walkers. My grandfather used to tell stories. They sleep in the rocks for hundreds of years until something wakes them. And now?" He looked around nervously. "Now they're hungry." Another grinding sound echoed through the cove. When I looked back at the sleeping giant, its stone face had changed again. Now it was smiling. "Come with me," Tommy said urgently. "There are things you need to know, things I should have told you years ago." As we walked to his truck, I heard that furniture-dragging sound again. Looking back, I saw the round boulder, the one that had grown edges, was now several feet from where it had been, and in the sand around it were marks like something had dragged itself across the ground. The marks looked like footprints, giant, square footprints pressed deep into the desert sand. "Hurry," Tommy said, opening his truck door. "It's not safe here when the sun is going down. That's when they like to move." "Move?" I asked, getting into the passenger seat. "Move where?" Tommy started the engine and looked at me with tired eyes. "Wherever they want, Ranger Walker. Wherever they want. And heaven help anyone who gets in their way." As we drove off, I watched the rocks in my side mirror. Just before we turned the corner, I could have sworn I saw the sleeping giant's head turn to follow our truck. And somewhere in the distance, I heard what sounded like stone grinding against stone, like footsteps, only much, much bigger. The desert had kept its secrets for millions of years. Now those secrets were waking up, and I had a feeling things at Joshua Tree would never be the same again. Tommy's house was small and simple, sitting at the edge of the reservation. Inside, every wall was covered with old photos and drawings of Joshua Tree. Some of them looked really old, like from when my grandparents were kids. "Sit," Tommy said, heading to a back room. "I'll make coffee, we've got a long night ahead." While he was in the kitchen, I looked closer at the photos. One caught my eye. It was from 1932, showing a group of park workers standing in front of Indian Cove. But something was wrong with the picture. The rock formations in the background, they were different, completely different from how they look today. "That's not possible," I muttered, taking the photo off the wall for a better look. "Everything is possible with the Gogim," Tommy said, returning with 2 steaming cups. "Those rocks in the picture, they're the same ones you saw today. They just rearranged themselves." I took a sip of coffee to steady my nerves. "Tell me everything, Tommy, from the beginning." He sat down heavily in his old armchair. "My people have lived here for thousands of years. We always knew about the Stone Walkers. They were here first, you see, long before humans. They sleep, most of the time, deep in the rock. But every few generations, something wakes them up. What wakes them? Change. Too many people. Too much noise. Too much disrespect." He looked at me sadly. "No offense, Daniel, but turning their home into a tourist park? That was bound to cause trouble. I thought about the missing people. The disappearances, that was them? Tommy nodded. They take things that interest them, sometimes small things like clothes or toys. Sometimes... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. But why didn't you warn us? I asked. Why? Keep it secret? We tried. Back in '36, my grandfather told the Park Service about the Gogim. They laughed at him, called him a superstitious old man. Tommy stood up and pulled a dusty box from under his desk. But he kept records. Everything he knew about them. Everything he saw. He opened the box and started laying out old journals, drawings, and more. Photographs. Each one showed the same thing. Rock formations that had changed position or shape overnight. Look at this one, he said, pointing to a journal entry from 1940. 3 rangers disappeared that summer. The official report said they got lost in a sandstorm. But my grandfather wrote what really happened. He saw one of the Gogim take them. I picked up the journal, my hands shaking a little. The handwriting was faded but clear. The stone opened like a door. Inside was darkness deeper than any cave. The ranger didn't even have time to scream before it closed again. By morning, the rocks had moved to a new place like nothing ever happened. How do we stop them? I asked. Tommy shook his head. Stop them? Daniel, they're as old as the earth itself. You might as well try to stop the wind or the rain. Then what can we do? We can't just let them keep taking people. He was quiet for a long moment. There might be a way, not to stop them, but to talk to them, make a deal. He pulled out another paper, this one covered in strange symbols. My grandfather tried once. He learned their language, the language of stone and earth. Did it work? Partly. They agreed to sleep longer, to stay quiet. But that was before... He gestured vaguely. Before the crowds, the camping sites, the tour buses. I was about to ask another question when my radio suddenly crackled to life. Bob's voice came through, panicked and breaking up. Walker! Emergency. At Split Rock. Something's happening. The whole formation is... Oh God. The radio went dead. Tommy and I looked at each other. Without a word, we both stood up and headed for the door. But he stopped me before I could open it. Wait, he said, grabbing more papers from the box. You'll need these. And Daniel? His eyes were deadly serious. Don't look directly at their faces. That's how they mark you. That's how they choose who to take. The drive back to the park was the longest 15 minutes of my life. The sun had set, and in the darkness, every shadow looked like it might be moving. Every rock looked like it might be watching us. When we finally reached Split Rock, my headlights caught something that made me slam on the brakes. The massive rock formation, the one that had stood there unchanged for as long as anyone could, remember, was standing up. Not just standing, walking, and in the beam of my headlights I could see Bob's empty park ranger truck, crushed flat beneath one enormous stone foot. Tommy grabbed my arm before I could get out of the car. Remember, he said, his voice shaking. Don't look at its face. But it was too late. I already had, and it was already looking back at me. Have you ever had a staring contest with a mountain? That's what it felt like looking into the face of the stone walker. Its eyes were deep holes in the rock, but somehow I could feel them pulling at me, like a vacuum trying to suck me in. Daniel, don't move, Tommy whispered next to me. Stay perfectly still. The creature was huge, maybe 30 feet tall. In the headlights, I could see parts of it still changing shape. Rock grinding against rock as its arms grew longer, its fingers stretching out like stone icicles. The sound was like 1,000 pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. That's when I heard Bob's voice, weak but alive, coming from behind a boulder. Walker, help! The stone walker heard it too. Its head turned toward the sound, rock cracking and shifting as it moved. Each step it took made the ground shake under our truck. We have to help him, I said, reaching for my door handle. Tommy grabbed my arm. Wait! You'll need protection first. He pulled something from his pocket, a small leather pouch on a string. My grandfather's medicine bag. It has crushed turquoise inside. The Gogim don't like turquoise. It reminds them of the sky, and they hate the sky because they can't control it. I put the bag around my neck, took a deep breath, and opened my door. The cold desert air hit me like a slap. "Bob," I called out. "Keep talking so I can find you." "Over. Here." His voice was closer now. My legs stuck. I moved slowly, keeping my eyes on the ground. The stone walker was getting closer to Bob's voice, too. Its footsteps shook loose rocks from the nearby cliffs. That's when something strange happened. The turquoise bag around my neck started feeling warm, really warm. And the stone walker, it stopped moving, its head turned toward me, and it took a step back. "It's working," Tommy called from the truck. "The turquoise is protecting you. Go get Bob." I ran to where I heard his voice. Bob was wedged between two rocks, his leg pinned but not crushed. He looked up at me with wide eyes. "Walker," he whispered, "please tell me I'm hallucinating. Please tell me that's not really a..." "Sorry, Bob. It's real. But right now we need to get you out of here." The stone walker was still backing away, but something else was happening. The rocks around us, all of them, were starting to move. Small ones first, rolling and tumbling like they were being pulled by magnets. Then bigger ones, shifting and grinding. They were all moving toward the stone walker, like iron filings to a giant magnet. "It's gathering strength," Tommy shouted. "It's calling the other rocks to join it." I pulled at Bob's leg, trying to free him. The rocks holding him were starting to shake too, wanting to join the others. "The turquoise," Tommy yelled. "Put it on the rocks trapping him." I took off the medicine bag and pressed it against the rocks pinning Bob's leg. There was a sound like a groan, and the rocks actually moved away from the bag, just enough for Bob to pull free. We half carried, half dragged him back to the truck. Behind us, the stone walker was getting bigger, much bigger. Other rocks were attaching themselves to it like pieces of a puzzle, making it grow taller and wider. "Drive!" Bob yelled as we got him into the back seat. "For God's sake, drive." I didn't need to be told twice. I threw the truck into reverse and hit the gas. In the rearview mirror, I saw the stone walker reach its now massive arm toward us, fingers of rock stretching out like spears. "Faster!" Tommy shouted. I swerved just as a stone finger smashed into the ground where we'd been seconds before, leaving a crater in the desert floor. We drove straight to the ranger station. Inside, Bob collapsed into a chair, while Tommy and I grabbed every map of the park we could find. "Look at this," Tommy said, spreading out the oldest map we had from 1933. "All these X marks, they show where the Gogim used to sleep. But now," he pulled out a current map. "The sleeping spots are all tourist areas now. Camping sites, parking lots, places full of people." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We can't just evacuate the whole..." "Briggy, no," Tommy said quietly, "but I know what they want." He pulled out his grandfather's journal again and pointed to a page. "They want their sacred spaces back, the quiet places where they can sleep undisturbed." "How do you know?" "Because that's what the symbols on the petroglyphs say. The ones you saw this morning. They're not just drawings, they're a message, a warning." He looked at me seriously. "And now that you've seen their true face, you're connected to them. They'll listen to you." "Listen to me? How?" "There's a ritual, a way to speak their language, but Daniel..." He hesitated. "It's dangerous. If it works, we might be able to make peace with them. But if it fails..." A deep rumbling sound cut him off. The whole station shook. Coffee cups fell off desks. Outside, we could hear the sound of stone grinding against stone. Closer now. Much closer. "We're out of time," Tommy said. "They're coming, all of them, and they're angry." I looked out the window. In the darkness, I could see them. Not just one stone walker now, but 3. No, 4. Their massive shapes moving through. The desert night like living mountains, and they were all heading straight for us. "Tell me about this ritual," I said, my mouth dry. "Tell me everything." The ritual wasn't complicated, but that made it scarier somehow. Tommy said I had to go alone to the center of Indian Cove, carrying only 3 things: his grandfather's medicine bag, A handful of crushed turquoise and an old clay bowl filled with water from the deepest spring in the park. Water is the opposite of stone, Tommy explained as he filled the bowl. It shapes rock, moves it, changes it, they respect its power. Bob's leg was bandaged now, but he still looked worried. This is crazy, Walker. You can't go out there alone. He has to, Tommy said. They chose him when they showed him their true face. He's the only one they might listen to now. Outside, we could hear the stone walkers getting closer. The ground shook with every step they took. Windows rattled. Car alarms started going off in the parking lot. I took a deep breath. Tell me one more time what I need to do. Tommy handed me the bowl of spring water. Walk to the center of their sacred ground. Pour the water in a circle around you. Put the turquoise at 4 points, north, south, east, and west. Then speak the words I taught you. And that will make them listen. It will make them stop long enough to hear you out. After that, he shrugged. It depends on what you offer them. I nodded, trying to remember the words he'd taught me. They weren't in English or in Tommy's native language. They were older than both, he said, the language of earth and stone. One more thing, Tommy said, grabbing my arm. Whatever happens, don't break the water circle. It's the only thing that will protect you if they get angry. I stepped outside. The night was clear and cold. Stars twinkling above like they didn't know or care about what was happening below. In the distance, I could see the stone walkers. 5 of them now, each as tall as a 4-story building. They moved slowly but steadily, their rocky bodies changing shape with every step. The drive to Indian Cove was the longest 5 minutes of my life. When I got there, I could see more petroglyphs had appeared on the rock walls. New ones, freshly carved. They showed human figures running from giant stone shapes. A warning? A threat? Maybe both. I walked to the center of the cove, my flashlight, beam bouncing off the rocks. Every shadow looked like it might be moving. Every stone looked like it might suddenly stand up. Following Tommy's instructions, I poured the spring water in a perfect circle around me. The water seemed to glow slightly, in the moonlight. Then I placed the crushed turquoise at the 4 points around the circle. That's when I felt them coming. The ground started shaking, not like an earthquake, but like giant footsteps getting closer and closer. Pebbles bounced on the ground. The beam of my flashlight showed dust falling from the cliff walls as the stone walkers approached. They came from all directions at once. 5 massive figures made of living rock, their bodies constantly shifting and changing shape. In the moonlight, I could see faces forming and dissolving in their stone bodies. Faces I recognized. The missing tourists. Bob's scared expression. Even my own face reflected back at me in the living rock. I swallowed hard and spoke the words Tommy had taught me. They felt strange in my mouth, like trying to speak with a mouthful of sand. Ketham Ara, Nim Tokra, Sathim Ara. The stonewalkers stopped. All 5 of them turned their massive heads toward me. The ground went still. In the silence that followed, I heard a voice, not with my ears, but in my head. It was like the sound of mountains grinding together, of rocks tumbling down a cliff face. Speak, human. I cleared my throat. I know why you're angry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This was your place first, your quiet place. We came and made it noisy, crowded. We didn't show respect. The Ani's largest stone walker took a step forward. The water circle around me rippled but didn't break. You understand nothing, the voice ground out in my head. We are the guardians, the watchers. This place is sacred. Then let us protect it together, I said. I'm a guardian too. That's what a ranger does. We can find a way. Some places can be just for you. No tourists, no camping, no noise. Sacred spaces like they used to be. The stone walkers turned to each other, their rocky faces shifting and changing as they seemed to communicate silently. Prove it, the voice said finally. Prove you understand sacrifice. I thought about the missing people, about Bob's crushed truck, about all the danger these creatures could cause. Then I thought about the park, my park, that I'd spent my whole life protecting. I stepped out of the water circle. The stone walkers all moved at once, surrounding me. I could feel their power, their age, their anger. but I stood my ground. Take me, I said quietly. Not as a prisoner, but as a guardian. Let me be your voice, your translator, between your world and ours. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then I felt something cold touch my hand. I looked down and saw my fingers turning gray, becoming stone-like. You choose this? The voice asked. I choose to protect this place, I said. Whatever it takes. The gray spread up my arm, but it didn't hurt. It felt right, like becoming part of something ancient and powerful. We accept. The transformation stopped at my shoulder. My left arm was now living stone, like theirs, but the rest of me stayed human. A bridge between two worlds, I whispered, understanding. The stone walkers began to sink back into the ground, becoming part of the landscape again. But now I could feel them, could sense them sleeping beneath the desert floor. I drove back to the ranger station as the sun was coming up. Tommy took one look at my stone arm and nodded like he'd expected this all along. The papers are already drawn up, he said. 3 new restricted areas in the park, sacred spaces, protected spaces. For them to sleep, I said. And for you to watch over them, he added. I looked down at my stone hand. In the morning light, I could see tiny crystals in it, catching the sun like stars. Bob came limping over. So, what do we tell people? About your arm? I smiled. We tell them the truth, that Joshua Tree has many guardians, some human, some not so human, and all of them dedicated to keeping this place safe. As if in agreement, I felt a slight tremor under my feet, like a sleeping giant, sighing contentedly in its dreams. Welcome to the night shift, Tommy said with a small smile. I nodded, looking out over the park, my park, as the morning sun painted the rocks in shades of gold and red. Somewhere out there, the stone walkers were sleeping again, and I would be here watching, protecting, guarding, part human, part stone, a bridge between two worlds, a watcher in the desert night. Story 3. The howl that echoed through the Ozark forest that night wasn't like anything I'd heard before. It wasn't a wolf, wasn't a coyote, and definitely wasn't human. But somehow, when I heard it, I felt like it was calling my name. Let me back up a bit. I'm Thomas Reynolds, park ranger at Ozark National Forest. And what I'm about to tell you happened during the strangest week of my life, back in 1976. Some nights, I still wake up wondering if it was all real. But then I look at the scars on my arms and remember, every single bit of it happened. Before becoming a ranger, I spent 2 years in Vietnam. The jungle there taught me things about survival that no training manual could. But more than that, it taught me to trust my gut. And my gut had been screaming at me since the start of that week when the lunar eclipse was approaching. It began with small things. Things most people would brush off. I was doing my usual sunset patrol, checking the western trail that twisted through the oldest part of the forest. The leaves were showing off their autumn colors, bright reds and oranges that usually made forest look like it was on fire in the evening light. But that day, something was off. Hey, Bill, I called into my radio, trying to reach my fellow ranger at the station. You notice anything weird about the birds today? Static answered me, for a few seconds before Bill's voice crackled through. Like what, Tommy? Like there aren't any. The forest was dead quiet. No woodpeckers hammering away at the trees, no squirrels chattering. Nothing. Just silence so thick it felt like a heavy blanket pressing down on my shoulders. I'd been having flashbacks to Nam more often that week. My therapist said it was normal, that loud noises or certain smells could trigger memories. But this was different. The silence reminded me of those moments right before an ambush, when even the jungle itself seemed to hold its breath. The sun was setting faster than usual, or maybe it just felt that way because of the weird fog rolling in. It came in thick waves, hugging the ground like something alive, and through the trees I could see the moon rising, bigger than normal and tinted blood red from the upcoming eclipse. That's when I noticed the tracks. 15 years as a ranger and I'd never seen anything like them. They looked almost like wolf prints, but way too big. Bigger than my hand. and they were arranged in a pattern that made no sense. Animals don't walk in perfect circles. I knelt down to take a closer look, and that's when the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. You know that feeling when you're being watched? This was worse. This felt like someone, or something, was not just watching but studying me. The shadows around me seemed to move against the wind, which shouldn't have been possible. The air felt strange too, like right before a lightning storm, making my skin tingle. And the trees, I swear the bark was glowing with a faint blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. I reached for my flashlight, and my hand was shaking. Not from fear, at least that's what I told myself. The beam of light cut through the fog, and for a split second, I thought I saw something. A shape that was too tall to be a wolf, too strange to be a bear, and too quick to be human. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. "Tommy?" Bill's voice was tense. "You might want to get back to the station. We're getting some strange calls from the Morrison property. Their dogs are going crazy, and they're saying..." The radio went dead. Tried calling back, but all I got was static and something else. A sound so low I felt it more than heard it, like a growl, but inside my head. That's when I noticed the temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees. My breath came out in white puffs, and the fog had grown so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. But the weirdest part? Those glowing tree trunks were now the only light I could see, creating an eerie path through the forest. I had two choices: head back to the station or investigate the Morrison place myself. The smart thing would be to return to base, but something was pulling me toward the Morrison property like a fishhook in my gut. The same feeling I used to get in Nam when I knew something big was about to go down. Looking back now, I wish I'd gone back to the station. Maybe things would have turned out differently. But then again, maybe they were always meant to happen. Exactly this way. Because what I found at the Morrison property that night was just the beginning. The first piece of a puzzle that would change everything I thought I knew about our world. And those shapes I kept seeing in the fog, they were watching, waiting, and somehow I knew they were smart, smarter than any animal had a right to be. They were hunting all right, but not for food. They were hunting for me. The Morrisons' farm was about a mile away through the darkening woods. As I walked, I kept my flashlight beam low to the ground, watching for more of those strange tracks. The fog made everything look different, turning familiar trees into scary shapes. That's when I heard it, whimpering. Not human, but not quite. Animal either. It was coming from behind Old Man Morrison's barn. I'd known the Morrisons for years. They were good people who kept to themselves and their small farm. But tonight, something was wrong. Their house was dark, and their usually noisy farm was quiet. Too quiet, even their rooster, who would crow at all hours just to annoy everyone, was silent. "Hello?" I called out, keeping my voice low. "Mr. Morrison? It's Ranger Reynolds." No answer, but the whimpering got louder. I rounded the corner of the barn and my flashlight beam fell on their dog pen. The Morrisons had 5 dogs, big German shepherds they used to guard their sheep. Usually these dogs were fierce, barking at anything that moved, but now they were all huddled in the corner of their pen, shaking. "Hey there, boys," I said softly, approaching the pen. I knew these dogs. They'd never acted like this. The biggest one, Rex, looked up at me with eyes full of fear. That's when something really strange happened. I heard a voice in my head, clear as day. "Danger. Woods. Pack." I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my flashlight. The voice wasn't like thinking to myself. It was different, foreign. And somehow, I knew it had come from Rex. "Thomas, that you?" Mr. Morrison's voice came from behind me, making me jump. He was standing in his back door, holding a shotgun. Can't blame him, these were strange times. "Yeah, it's me," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Got a call about your dogs acting weird." Mr. Morrison walked over, still gripping his shotgun. "Weird ain't the word for it. Started about an hour ago. All of them at once, like they saw a ghost. Then the sheep started acting up too. As if on cue, we heard bleating from the sheep pen. But it wasn't normal, it was panicked. Sit, Tommy said, heading to a back room. I'll make coffee. We've got a long night ahead. While he was in the kitchen, I looked closer at the photos. One caught my eye. It was from 1932, showing a group of park workers standing in front of Indian Cove. But something was wrong with the picture. The rock formations in the background, they were different, completely different from how they look today. That's not possible, I muttered, taking the photo off the wall for a better look. Everything is possible with the Gogim, Tommy said, returning with 2 steaming cups. Those rocks in the picture, they're the same ones you saw today. They just rearranged themselves. I took a sip of coffee to steady my nerves. Tell me everything, Tommy, from the beginning. He sat down heavily in his old armchair. My people have lived here for thousands of years. We always knew about the stone walkers. They were here first, you see. Long before humans. They sleep. Most of the time, deep in the rock. But every few generations, something wakes them up. What wakes them? Change. Too many people. Too much noise. Too much disrespect. He looked at me sadly. No offense, Daniel, but turning their home into tourist park? That was bound to cause trouble. I thought about the missing people. The disappearances, that was them? Tommy nodded. They take things that interest them, sometimes small things like clothes or toys. Sometimes... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. But why didn't you warn us? I asked. Why? Keep it secret? We tried. Back in '36, my grandfather told the Park Service about the Gogim. They laughed at him, called him a superstitious old man. Tommy stood up and pulled a dusty box from under his desk. But he kept records. Everything he knew about them. Everything he saw. He opened the box and started laying out old journals, drawings, and more. Photographs. Each one showed the same thing. Rock formations that had changed position or shape overnight. Look at this one, he said, pointing to a journal entry from 1940. 3 rangers disappeared that summer. The official report said they got lost in a sandstorm. But my grandfather wrote what really happened. He saw one of the Gogim take them. I picked up the journal, my hands shaking a little. The handwriting was faded but clear. The stone opened like a door. Inside was darkness deeper than any cave. The ranger didn't even have time to scream before it closed again. By morning, the rocks had moved to a new place like nothing ever happened. How do we stop them? I asked. Tommy shook his head. Stop them? Daniel, they're as old as the earth itself. You might as well try to stop the wind or the rain. Then what can we do? We can't just let them keep taking people. He was quiet for a long moment. There might be a way. Not to stop them, but to talk to them, make a deal. He pulled out another paper, this one covered in strange symbols. My grandfather tried once. He learned their language, the language of stone and earth. Did it work? Partly. They agreed to sleep longer, to stay quiet. But that was before, he gestured vaguely, before the crowds, the camping sites, the tour buses. I was about to ask another question when my radio suddenly crackled to life. Bob's voice came through, panicked and breaking up. Walker! Emergency! Split Rock, something's happening. The whole formation is... Oh, God. The radio went dead. Tommy and I looked at each other. Without a word, we both stood up and headed for the door. But he stopped me before I could open it. Wait, he said, grabbing more papers from the box. You'll need these. And Daniel... His eyes were deadly serious. Don't look directly at their faces. That's how they mark you. That's how they choose who to take. The drive back to the park was the longest 15 minutes of my life. The sun had set, and in the darkness, every shadow looked like it might be moving. Every rock looked like it might be watching us. When we finally reached Split Rock, my headlights caught something that made me slam on the brakes. The massive rock formation, the one that had stood there unchanged for as long as anyone could, remember, was standing up. Not just standing, walking. And in the beam of my headlights, I could see Bob's empty park ranger truck, crushed flat beneath one enormous stone foot. Tommy grabbed my arm before I could get out of the car. Remember, he said, his voice shaking, don't look at its face. But it was too late. I already had, and it was already looking back at me. Have. You ever had a staring contest with a mountain? That's what it felt like looking into the face of the stone walker. Its eyes were deep holes in the rock, but somehow I could feel them pulling at me, like a vacuum trying to suck me in. "Daniel, don't move," Tommy whispered next to me. "Stay perfectly still." The creature was huge, maybe 30 feet tall. In the headlights, I could see parts of it still changing shape. Rock grinding against rock as its arms grew longer, its fingers stretching out like stone icicles. The sound was like 1,000 pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. That's when I heard Bob's voice, weak but alive, coming from behind a boulder. "Walker, help!" The stone walker heard it too. Its head turned toward the sound, rock cracking and shifting as it moved. Each step it took made the ground shake under our truck. "We have to help him," I said, reaching for my door handle. Tommy grabbed my arm. "Wait, you'll need protection first." He pulled something from his pocket, a small leather pouch on a string. "My grandfather's medicine bag. It has crushed turquoise inside. The Gogim don't like turquoise. It reminds them of the sky, and they hate the sky because they can't control it." I put the bag around my neck, took a deep breath, and opened my door. The cold desert air hit me like a slap. "Bob," I called out, "keep talking so I can find you." "Over here." His voice was closer now. My legs stuck. I moved slowly, keeping my eyes on the ground. The stone walker was getting closer to Bob's voice too. Its footsteps shook loose rocks from the nearby cliffs. That's when something strange happened. The turquoise bag around my neck started feeling warm. Really warm, and the stone walker, it stopped moving. Its head turned toward me and it took a step back. "It's working," Tommy called from the truck. "The turquoise is protecting you. Go get Bob." I ran to where I heard his voice. Bob was wedged between two rocks, his leg pinned but not crushed. He looked up at me with wide eyes. "Walker," he whispered. "Please tell me I'm hallucinating. Please tell me that's not really a..." "Sorry, Bob. It's real. But right now, we need to get you out of here." The stone walker was still backing away, but something else was happening. The rocks around us, all of them, were starting to move. Small ones first, rolling and tumbling like they were being pulled by magnets. Then bigger ones, shifting and grinding. They were all moving toward the stone walker like iron filings to a giant magnet. "It's gathering strength," Tommy shouted. "It's calling the other rocks to join it." I pulled at Bob's leg, trying to free him. The rocks holding him were starting to shake too, wanting to join the others. "The turquoise," Tommy yelled. "Put it on the rocks trapping him." My radio crackled again. This time it was Morrison. "Thomas, they're back and they've got my dogs." The sun was setting outside. Through the station window I could see the moon rising, bigger and redder than ever. The eclipse was tomorrow night. We're running out of time. I grabbed my gear and rushed to Morrison's farm, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun had almost set, and the blood-red moon was rising. The air felt heavy, like right before a big storm. When I got there, I found Morrison standing in his yard, staring at his empty dog pen. The gate wasn't broken. It was open, like someone with hands had unlatched it. "They just walked right in," Morrison said, his voice shaking. "The dogs, they just followed them like they were in some kind of trance." I shined my flashlight around the yard. The tracks were everywhere now, both wolf-like prints and dog prints, all heading toward the forest. "Follow. Time comes. Pack waits." The voice in my head was stronger than ever. This time I didn't fight it. "Mr. Morrison," I said, checking my radio. "Flashlight. I need you to go inside, lock your doors, and don't come out until morning. No matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" I looked at the forest. "I'm going to get your dogs back." The moment I stepped into the trees, everything changed. The fog was back, but different now. It seemed to glow with a faint blue light, just like the tree bark. My flashlight beam couldn't cut through it more than a few feet. I followed the tracks, moving as quietly as I could. In Vietnam, I'd learned to move through jungle without making a sound. Those skills were coming back to me now like riding a bicycle. The deeper I went into the forest, the stronger the voices in my head became. They weren't just sending words anymore, they were sending feelings, excitement, anticipation, and something else. Hope? A twig snapped behind me. I spun around and found myself face to face with Rex, Morrison's biggest dog. His eyes were glowing yellow, just like the creature's. "Hey boy," I said softly. "You in there?" "He is packed now, like you will be." The voice wasn't coming from Rex this time. It was coming from behind me. I turned slowly. There they were, the whole pack. 7 feet tall, standing on 2 legs, with bodies that looked like a mix between wolf and human. Their fur was dark gray, almost black, and their yellow eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. But it was their faces that got me. They looked intelligent. Their eyes held wisdom, not just animal hunger. And they were all staring right at me. The largest one stepped forward. Unlike the others, its fur was streaked with silver, like an old warrior's gray hair. You understand now why you were chosen. Images flashed through my mind. Me as a child, feeling different from others. My time in Vietnam, surviving when others didn't. My connection to the forest, stronger than any other ranger's. "You've been watching me," I said. It wasn't a question. "Many moons. You are like us. Between worlds. Not fully human. Not fully wild. Perfect for pack." My head was spinning. The dogs? Safe. Learning. Becoming more like you will. Another creature stepped forward, carrying something in its hand like paws. It looked like an old piece of stone covered in cave paintings. The same ones I'd seen in those old photographs. History. Our story. Your story now. The silver-streaked leader reached out one clawed hand. In the moonlight, I could see scars all over its arm, like battle wounds from long ago. That's when it hit me. The disappearances 50 years ago weren't attacks. They were transformations. The pack wasn't hunting people to hurt them. They were looking for new members. A howl split the night air, making me jump. More creatures emerged from the fog, forming a circle around me. But I wasn't scared anymore. Somehow this felt right. Choose now. Eclipse comes. Time of change. I looked up. The moon was almost fully red now, the eclipse about to begin. I could feel something building in the air like electricity before lightning strikes. That's when I heard Bill's voice on my radio. "Tommy, where are you? We've got reports of weird lights all over the forest." I reached for my radio but stopped. What would I even say? Old life or new life? Must choose. The silver-streaked leader was still holding out its hand. Behind it, I could see Morrison's dogs, sitting calmly among the creatures. They looked happy. But this wasn't just about me. If I joined them, what about my job? My responsibility? To protect people? Pack protects forest, protects territory, protects people too. Different way, more images filled my head. The pack stopping forest fires before they spread, guiding lost hikers to safety without being seen, keeping dangerous animals away from campgrounds. They weren't monsters. They were guardians. Ancient. Guardians who needed new blood to keep their pack strong. The moon was almost completely dark now. I could feel the change in the air, like the whole forest was holding its breath. I thought about Sarah's words. They're not evil. They're nature. I looked at the leader's outstretched hand. My own hand was shaking as I reached out. Choice made. Pack grows. Change comes. The moment our hands touched, the eclipse became complete. The forest went dark, and everything changed. I woke up the next morning in my own bed, wondering if it had all been a dream. But when I looked in the mirror, I knew it was real. My eyes had flecks of yellow in them now, and I could hear things from miles away. I drove to the Morrison farm. First thing, I needed to explain about their dogs. Mr. Morrison was already outside when I pulled up. To my surprise, he was smiling. "The dogs came back this morning," he said, pointing to the pen. Sure enough, all 5 German shepherds were there, looking healthy and happy. But they were different too. Their eyes had that same knowing look I now saw in my mirror. "Mr. Morrison," I started. About last night. He held up his hand. Don't. Explain, Thomas. My grandfather told me stories about the forest guardians. Never thought they were real until now. He looked at me carefully. You're one of them now, aren't you? I nodded slowly. Part of me is, but I'm still me. Still your ranger. Good, he said. The forest needs people like you, people who understand both sides. Back at the ranger station, Bill was waiting with a cup of coffee and a pile of reports. Weirdest night ever, he said. Got calls about lights in the sky, strange animal noises, even some talk about walking wolves. He looked at me. But when we sent patrols out, they didn't find anything. Just tracks that went nowhere. Maybe some mysteries are better left unsolved, I said, taking a sip of coffee. I could smell every bean that went into making it now. Maybe, Bill agreed. But something's different about the forest today. Can't put my finger on it, but it feels safer somehow. He was right. I could feel it too. The pack, my pack now, was out there, watching, protecting, just like they had for hundreds of years. That evening, I went to see Sarah running deer. She was on her porch again, just like before. The pack chose well, she said as I sat down. You knew this would happen? She smiled. I knew they were looking. Knew they needed someone who could walk in both worlds. Someone who could help people understand that not everything strange is dangerous. I thought about that. About how I could use my new position, both as ranger and pack member, to keep people safe while protecting the forest's secrets. Will I change? Become like them completely? You'll change as much as you need to, she said. No more, no less. That's the magic of the pack. They don't take away who you are. They add to it. As if to prove her point, I heard a distant howl. But now I could understand it. It was a patrol call. Two of the younger pack members letting us know that the eastern border was safe. The eclipse week is over, Sarah said. Things will quiet down now, but you'll never be alone again. She was right. Even now I could feel the pack in my mind. Not controlling, just there, like having a family I never knew I needed. I still do my ranger duties every day. Still help lost hikers and check camping permits. But now I do more. Things people don't see. Things that keep both the forest and the people in it safe. And sometimes on quiet nights when the moon is full, I run with the pack. We move through the trees like shadows, watching, protecting, belonging. They say every forest has its secrets. Now I'm one of them. But if you're ever in the Ozarks and you hear a wolf howl that sounds almost human, don't be afraid. It's just me and my family, keeping watch over our territory. After all, every pack needs a good ranger. Story 4. The morning I saw my first dead body wash up on the shores of Acadia, I knew the sea was trying to tell me something. 23 years as a park ranger, and I'd never seen anything like it. The man's skin was pure white, like paper. And his eyes, well, let's just say they weren't eyes anymore. Just empty black holes filled with what looked like crushed obsidian. My name is Catherine Reynolds, and I've spent most of my life around water. First as a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, now as a park ranger at Acadia National Park. The locals call me the Water Witch because I can predict storms better than any weather app. But that's not magic, it's just experience. When you lose your brother to the sea, you learn to read every ripple, every change in the wind. The medallion around. My neck grew cold as I knelt beside the body. It's an old tribal piece I found in a tide pool 10 years ago. A silver disc with strange swirling patterns that remind me of whirlpools. I've never been able to take it off since the day I found it. Sounds crazy, right? But after what I've seen these past few weeks, crazy has taken on a whole new meaning. It started with the fog, not your regular Maine morning mist that rolls in gentle and quiet. This was different. This fog moved like it was alive, creeping against the wind, wrapping around the ancient pines like fingers. The seabirds noticed it first. One day they were there, filling the air with their usual screaming and squawking. The next day, silence, complete, Dead silence. I remember standing on Thunderhole Cliff that first strange morning, watching the waves crash 30 feet high against the rocks. The water looked wrong. Instead of our usual deep blue-green, there were patches of pitch black like ink had been poured into the sea. And in the distance, the old lighthouse kept flashing its warning signals, even though it was barely past dawn. My radio crackled. "Catherine, you there?" It was Mike from dispatch. "We've got another missing kayaker, third one this month." I pressed the radio button, trying to ignore the way my medallion seemed to pulse against my chest. "Location? Near the sea caves. UD. No, the ones with those old Indian drawings." My heart sank. Those caves had been giving me bad dreams lately. The pictographs on their walls, drawings of swirling mists and tall, stretched-out figures, seemed to change positions when no one was looking. I'd kept that detail out of my reports. Who'd believe me? "On my way," I said, already heading down the trail. That's when I saw it. In the thick fog ahead, something moved. Not like an animal or a person, but like water flowing upward. It took a human shape for just a second. Tall, impossibly tall, and I swear it turned to look at me. Then it melted away leaving behind a patch of frost in the middle of a Maine summer morning. The medallion burned cold against my skin, and in my head I heard a whisper that sounded just like my brother Tommy's voice, the way it sounded the day he drowned. "Kathy, the water remembers." I should have called for backup, should have reported what I saw, but 23 years of being the practical, logical ranger held me back. Instead, I pulled out my flashlight and headed toward the sea caves, trying to ignore the way the fog seemed to follow my every step. What I didn't know then was that this was just the beginning, that the thing in the mist had been waiting for me, watching me, and that before this was over, I'd learn exactly why my brother's last words were about water having a memory. Because in Acadia, the sea keeps its secrets, and some of them have teeth. The sea caves were darker than usual that morning. My flashlight beam seemed weaker too, like the darkness was eating the light. As I walked closer, I kept thinking about the missing kayaker. This wasn't like our usual rescue missions where people just got lost or stuck somewhere. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing off the wet walls. "Park Ranger, anyone here?" The only answer was the drip, drip, drip of water and something else. A soft humming sound, like someone singing far away. I'd heard that sound in my dreams lately, always waking up with the taste of salt water in my mouth. That's when I found the kayak. It was wedged between two rocks, completely empty. But what made my skin crawl was the way it looked. The bright, red paint had turned white like all the color had been sucked out of it, just like the body I'd found earlier. My radio crackled, making me jump. "Catherine?" It was Mike again. "We've got 2 hikers reporting strange lights under the water near Baker Island." "What kind of lights?" "Blue-green," they said, moving in patterns. Thought it was bioluminescent algae at first, but he paused. They said the lights followed their boat. I touched my medallion. It was ice cold again. "Mike, pull up the records. From the past month, how many people have gone missing around here?" While I waited for his answer, I noticed something on the cave wall that made my blood run cold. The ancient tribal drawings were different. Yesterday they showed figures dancing in the mist. Now they showed the figures being pulled into the water by long, dark shapes. 7, Mike finally said. 7 people in the past month. That's more than we usually get in a year. And all near water? Yeah. Wait, what are you thinking? I was thinking about Tommy, about the day we found his boat, empty and bleached white, just like this kayak, about how the official report said he drowned, but they never found his body, and about what he'd been trying to tell me the week before it happened. "The water's wrong," he'd said. "It's like it's watching me." I'd laughed it off then. Now, standing in this cave with that strange humming getting louder, I wasn't laughing anymore. Something splashed in the darkness ahead. My flashlight caught. A glimpse of movement. Not a person, but something like black smoke under the water. And in that smoke I saw faces. Dozens of faces. all with black crystal eyes, all looking right at me. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding. The humming got louder, and now I could make out words in it. Sister, sister of the lost one. That's when my flashlight died. In the pitch black, I felt something cold and wet brush against my ankle. The medallion around my neck began to glow with a soft blue light, something it had never done before. In its glow, I saw the water rising around my feet, but it wasn't normal water. It was black as ink, and it was rising fast. I ran. I ran like I'd never run before, the sound of rushing water behind me. Just before I reached the cave entrance, I heard Tommy's voice again, clear as day. "The tide is turning, Kathy. They're coming back." Outside, the fog had gotten thicker, but something was wrong with it. It moved in shapes, human shapes, reaching out with misty hands as I passed. And behind me, a deep voice that seemed to come from the ocean itself whispered, "You wear our mark, Guardian. You cannot escape what's coming." I made it back to my ranger station, soaking wet and shaking. On my desk was a file Mike had pulled up, a history of disappearances in Acadia going back 100 years. Every 25 years, like clockwork, people would vanish. And the dates always matched with strange tides and unusual fog. The next disappearance was marked for tomorrow. As I sat there trying to make sense of it all, I noticed something in the mirror behind my desk. The medallion's design had changed. The swirls now formed a clear pattern, a whirlpool with a face in its center. And it was starting to pulse with that same blue light again, like a heartbeat, like it was trying to warn me or guide me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my hands started shaking. It was a picture of Tommy, taken the day he disappeared. But in this version of the photo, there was something behind him in the fog. Something tall and dark, with eyes like black crystals. The message, below it said, "The waters remember, do you?" I couldn't sleep that night, how could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces in the black water. Around 3 a.m., I decided to do something crazy. I drove to visit old Joe, the oldest fisherman in town. If anyone knew the truth about these waters, it would be him. I found him sitting on his porch, like he was waiting for me. The fog had followed my car all the way here, which wasn't normal at all. "Been wondering when you'd come," he said, not even looking surprised to see me in the middle of the night. "That medallion you're wearing, it's getting brighter, isn't it?" My hand went to my neck. "How did you know?" He pointed to an old photo on his wall. It showed a younger version of himself standing next to a woman wearing an identical medallion. That was my grandmother. She was the last guardian. "Guardian of what?" "Sit down, Catherine. It's time you learned the truth about your brother, about all of them." The story he told me made my skin crawl. Long ago, the local tribe had lived in peace with something that lived in these waters, something that wasn't quite human. They called it the Mistwalker. It protected the waters and the people, but demanded a price. Every 25 years, it needed a new guardian to help keep the balance. "The medallion chooses," old Joe said. "It calls to someone who knows these waters, who's lost someone to them. The last guardian was supposed to be your brother." My heart stopped. "Tommy? He found the medallion first, didn't he? But he got scared, tried to throw it back into the sea. That's why the Mistwalker took him." Old Joe leaned forward. "And now it's chosen you instead." Suddenly, my radio burst to life with static. Through the noise, I heard Mike's voice. "Catherine, emergency. At Thunderhole. 3 tourists just got pulled in by something in the water." I jumped up, but old Joe grabbed my arm. "Wait, you need to know how to stop it. The Mistwalker's gotten too powerful. It's not just taking guardians anymore, it's taking anyone it can. You have to." But I never heard the rest, because right then every light in town went out at once. In the sudden darkness, I heard that humming again, the same sound from the cave. And it was coming from everywhere. "It's starting," old Joe whispered. I ran to my truck and sped toward Thunderhole. The fog was so thick I could barely see the road, but somehow my medallion's light helped guide the way. It was glowing brighter than ever now, pulsing faster and faster. When I got to Thunderhole, what I saw made me freeze. The waves were impossibly high, but they were moving wrong, like they were reaching up toward the sky. And in the water below, those strange lights were back, moving in circles like a giant whirlpool. 3 of my fellow rangers were already there, trying to throw rescue lines into the water. But the ropes kept snapping, like something was cutting them. "The tourists?" I shouted over the roar of the waves. "Still down there." Ranger Steve pointed at the water. "We saw something pull them under." That's when I saw it clearly for the first. Rising from the waves like a tower of black mist, a figure took shape. It was huge, maybe 30 feet tall, with those same crystal black eyes I'd seen in the cave. As it turned to look at us, I realized I could see right through it. And inside its misty body were dozens of people, frozen like statues, their eyes open and black, and there, right in the middle, was Tommy. The thing spoke, its voice like waves crashing on rocks. "The old bargain is broken. We protected your waters for centuries. Now we take what we want." Ranger Steve raised his flashlight, but the beam went right through the creature. It reached out with an arm made of mist, and before I could shout a warning, Steve was pulled into the air. The fog wrapped around him like a cocoon, and when it cleared, his body fell to the ground, white as paper, eyes turned to black crystal. My medallion was burning now, so hot it felt like it would melt into my skin. And suddenly I understood what I had to do, why it had chosen me, why it had been showing me all those visions. I wasn't just supposed to be the next guardian, I was supposed to be the last one. The Mist Walker turned its empty black eyes on me. "Sister of the Lost One," it said. "Will you join them? Will you join him?" Inside its misty body, Tommy's frozen form reached out toward me, his face trapped in an endless scream. I gripped my medallion tight and stepped toward the edge of the eye.
"Cliff."
"No," I said. "But I will stop you." The creature laughed, a sound like drowning. "You cannot stop the tide, little guardian. The sea remembers, and it is hungry." Behind me, I heard old Joe's truck pulling up. He was shouting something about a cave, the deepest cave where it all began. I knew what I had to do, but as I looked into those black crystal eyes, I wondered if I would survive what came next. And if I didn't, who would protect these waters then? I ran, not away from the monster, but toward the sea caves. Old Joe's words echoed in my head, where it all began. I knew which cave he meant, the deepest one, the one we weren't supposed to talk about, the one that went down under the ocean. Behind me, the Mistwalker moved like a storm cloud sweeping across the water. My fellow ranger Sarah tried to stop me. "Catherine, are you crazy? You can't go in there." "Get everyone away from the water," I told her. "As far as you can. And Sarah, if I don't come back, tell them what happened here." The cave entrance was hardly bigger than a door, hidden behind rocks that were slippery with seaweed. My flashlight showed the way down, 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 steep stone steps carved by people who lived here long ago. The walls were covered in more of those pictures telling a story I could finally understand. The Mistwalker wasn't just one creature. It was many, a whole tribe of beings who lived in the deep water. They'd made a deal with the local people. They would protect the waters, keep the fish plenty and the storms away, if they got to choose a guardian every 25 years. Someone to walk between their world and ours. But something had gone wrong. They'd gotten greedy, started taking more people than the deal allowed, and now they weren't going to stop. The humming got louder as I went deeper. My medallion's light turned from blue to bright white, lighting up the tunnel better than my flashlight. The air got colder, and the steps were getting steeper, but I kept going. Then I heard Tommy's voice. "Kathy, stop!" He was standing there in the tunnel, but not really him. A copy made of mist, just like the thing up above had shown me. "You'll drown down here," Not Tommy said. "Just like I did. Just give us the medallion, join us in the deep." "You're not my brother," I said, my voice shaking. The real Tommy would never give up, never stop fighting. The fake Tommy melted away into mist that slithered toward me like snakes. I ran faster, deeper into the cave. The steps ended at a round chamber with a pool of black water in the middle. Ancient carvings covered the walls. and in the center of the pool stood a stone pillar with a hand-shaped mark on it. The mistwalker poured into the room like smoke, taking shape again, but smaller this time, human-sized. It looked almost like a person made of dark glass with those same black crystal eyes. "You've come to the beginning," it said, "where the first guardian made the pact. And where I'm going to end it," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. It laughed that horrible, drowning laugh again. "You cannot end what you don't understand. We are the deep, we are the tide, we are eternal." "Then show me," I said, taking off my medallion. "Show me what you showed Tommy." The creature moved closer. Inside its misty body, I could still see all those frozen people, men, women, children, all with black crystal eyes. My brother among them. "You would trade yourself for them?" it asked. "No," I said. "I'm offering you something better. A new deal." I held up the medallion. It was burning white hot now, so bright it hurt to look at. The creature reached for it, and that's when I jumped into the pool. The water was so cold it felt like knives, but I knew what I had to do. The ancient carvings had shown it all. The pillar, the medallion, the price that had to be paid. The mistwalker screamed and dove in after me. I swam down toward the pillar. The creature's misty arms wrapped around me, trying to pull me back. My lungs were burning. Black spots danced in my eyes, but I reached the pillar. Slammed the medallion into that hand-shaped mark. Everything exploded into white light. I felt the creature's scream in my bones as the medallion's power surged through the water. The misty body around me began to break apart. All those frozen people inside it started to move, their black crystal eyes turning back to normal. I saw Tommy, really saw him, for just a second. He smiled at me, a real smile, not that fake mist copy, and mouthed the words, "Let go." Then everything went dark. I woke up on the beach, coughing up seawater. Sarah was there, and old Joe, and dozens of confused people who'd been trapped inside. The mistwalker. Some had been missing for years. They all told the same story, about being frozen in darkness, able to see but not move. While the creature used their memories and faces to lure more victims, Tommy's body washed up too, finally free after all these years. We could give him a proper burial at last. The medallion was gone, fused with that ancient pillar deep under the sea. The cave had collapsed, sealing away whatever was left of the mistwalker's power. But sometimes, on foggy mornings, I still hear that humming. And sometimes, when I look out at the waves, I see shapes moving in the mist. They're not hunting anymore, but they're still there in the deep water, waiting, watching, remembering. It's been 6 months since that night in the deep cave. Life in Acadia has mostly gone back to normal, if you can call it that. The tourists still come to watch the waves at Thunderhole. The fog still rolls in every morning. But now I know what's hiding in it, and I'm not the only one. We buried Tommy on a sunny day in October, on a cliff overlooking his favorite fishing spot. The newspaper said he'd been recently found, but didn't mention how. Some stories are better left untold. His body wasn't white anymore, and his eyes were back to their normal brown. It was like the sea had finally let him rest. The people who came out of the Mistwalker that night, 32 in total, some missing for decades, they're trying to rebuild their lives. Most moved away from the coast. Can't blame them. But a few stayed, including old Bill Cooper, who disappeared back in '95. He sits with me sometimes during my morning patrols. "You see anything in the fog today?" he always asks. "Just fog," I always answer. But we both know that's not quite true. The medallion might be gone, sealed away in that underwater cave, but its power left a mark on me. I can feel the tides changing before they turn. I know when storms are coming, not just from experience now, but from something deeper. And sometimes when I walk along the shore at dawn, the water reaches out to touch my feet. Not like normal waves, but like it's saying, "Hello, Sarah noticed something strange last week." The tribal drawings in the caves have changed again. Now they show a new figure, a woman standing between the sea and the land, keeping watch. The other rangers joke that it looks like me. Maybe they're right. Old Joe says I'm still a guardian, just a different kind. Not chosen by them, but by the sea itself. He taught me about the old ways, how to read the signs in the water, how to know when something's not right. The deal is broken, he says, but that doesn't mean we're safe. The deep has a long memory. He's right about that. Last month, 2 kids almost drowned when the tide came in too fast. I felt it coming and got there just in time. The water had turned black for just a second, and I heard that familiar humming. What was left of the Mistwalker was testing the boundaries, seeing what it could still do. I left them a warning that day, walked straight into the waves and spoke to the deep. Told them that I'm watching now, that the old deals are done, that they need to stay in their dark places. The water around me turned ice cold, and I heard whispers in that drowning voice. As you wish. For now. I still dream about that night. Sometimes. About Tommy's smile as his soul finally broke free. About the feeling of the medallion burning in my hand as I pressed it into that ancient stone. About all those faces in the mist, finally finding their way home. This morning I found something on my doorstep. A small black crystal, smooth as glass. A reminder maybe, or a warning. I took it back to the shore and threw it into the waves. The fog rolled back just a little, like it was nodding to me. The tourists still ask about the strange lights they sometimes see under the water, or why the fog moves against the wind on certain days. I tell them what they want to hear, about bioluminescent algae and unusual weather patterns. But I keep a closer watch now. We all do, because the sea keeps its secrets, but it also keeps its promises. And something tells me that one day, maybe 25 years from now, the deep will remember. The mist will take shape again, and someone new will have to make a choice. But until then, I'm here, watching the waves, listening to the fog, keeping the balance. After all, that's what guardians do. And sometimes, on very quiet mornings, I think I hear Tommy's voice in the wind. Not scary anymore, just gentle. Like he's watching too, helping me protect these waters we both loved so much. The sea remembers, Kathy, he seems to say. But so do we. And that's enough for now. The end I found the little girl sitting alone on the beach at sunrise. She was maybe 7 or 8, drawing patterns in the sand with a stick. But these weren't normal kid drawings. They were the same swirling shapes that used to be on my medallion. Are you lost? I asked, crouching down beside her. She shook her head. The water told me to wait here. Her voice was calm, like this was the most normal thing in the world. It said you'd come. My skin prickled. The fog was rolling in thick. Today and in the distance I heard that familiar humming. What's your name? I asked. Emily, she pointed at the waves. They've been talking to me in my dreams. Show me things, like they used to show you. I sat down next to her, my heart beating faster. What kind of things? People in the deep water. Swimming but not swimming. And a big shadow that watches from the fog. She looked at me with serious eyes. They're getting stronger again, aren't they? Before I could answer, something dark moved under the water near the shore. The fog crept closer, and in it I saw shapes starting to form. I grabbed Emily's hand. We need to go. Now. As we hurried up the beach, she dropped something in the sand. A small silver disc. Another medallion, identical to my old one. They want me to be the new guardian, she whispered. But I'm scared. I picked up the medallion. It was ice cold, just like mine used to be. In the fog behind us, I heard voices calling. Not the drowning sound of the Mistwalker, but children's voices, laughing and playing. Emily! A woman's voice called from the parking lot. Where are you, honey? That's my mom, Emily said. She doesn't believe me about the voices in the water. I knelt down and looked her in the eyes. Listen to me carefully. Keep this medallion safe, but don't wear it. Not yet. Come find me at the ranger station tomorrow. There are things you need to know. The fog was almost around us now. In it, I saw tall shapes forming, reaching out with misty hands. Run to your mom, I told her. Don't look back at the water. She ran. I stood facing the waves, watching the shadows move beneath them. The humming grew louder and words formed in my mind. The cycle begins again. No, I said firmly. Not with her. She's just a child. The fog pulled back a little, like it was considering. Then that deep voice spoke again. The deep needs its guardian. It has one, I said, me, and that's not changing. The fog swirled around me one last time, then pulled away. The humming faded. The water returned to its normal color. But I knew this wasn't over. They were testing again, searching for weakness. And now they were trying to take children. I walked to my truck and grabbed my radio. Sarah, get old Joe on. The phone, we've got work to do. Because some stories don't end. They just wait for the next chapter to begin. And I wasn't about to let them start this one. Not with Emily. Not with any child. Not while I still had breath in my body to stop it. The fog finally cleared, but as I drove away, I saw Emily watching. The waves from her mom's car. She waved at me and I waved back. In my mirror, I saw something wave from the water, too. Something tall and dark and hungry. The war for Acadia's soul wasn't over. It was just beginning. Story 5. I never thought I'd be writing this down, but people need to know what happened in Carlsbad Caverns last summer. My name is David Martinez, and after 30 years of exploring caves, I've seen some strange things, but nothing like this. Nothing that still keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it's truly trapped down there in the darkness. It started on what should have been a normal Tuesday morning. I was doing my usual walkthrough of the main cavern, my flashlight beam dancing across the limestone walls. As a park ranger here at Carlsbad, I'd walked these paths thousands of times. The familiar drip, drip, drip of water echoed through the chamber, a sound that had always been oddly comforting. Until that day. I'm 51 now, and before becoming a ranger, I taught geology at the university. My students used to joke that I could read rocks like other people read books. Maybe that's why I was the first one to notice when things started changing down here. Maybe that's why I'm still alive to tell this story. My grandmother was Native American, and she always told me our people had a special connection to these caves. When I was young, she gave me a small leather pouch filled with sacred tobacco. Keep it with you in the deep places, she'd said, her wrinkled hands pressing it into mine. Some things sleep in the earth that should not be awakened. I kept that pouch with me every day for 30 years, even though I never really believed her warnings. Not until now. That Tuesday morning, I was checking on a new group of crystal formations we'd discovered in the lower section. The cave air was cool and damp as always, but something felt different. You spend enough time underground, you develop a sixth sense for these things. The tourists never notice it, but we rangers do. The way sound travels, the way shadows move, the way the air feels on your skin. It all tells a story. I remember standing there, my flashlight aimed at a cluster of stalactites, when I first noticed something wrong. These formations, I knew every inch of them, had mapped and photographed them countless times, but now they looked changed, not in a way I could easily explain. It was like looking at a familiar face and realizing that somehow, overnight, the features had shifted ever so slightly. I pulled out my notebook and started sketching, trying to document what I was seeing. That's when I heard it. Not the usual drip of water or the squeak of bats. This was different. A sound that had no place being 300 feet underground. It sounded like breathing, deep rhythmic breathing, coming from somewhere in the rock itself. I've been in caves during earthquakes. I've dealt with cave-ins and flash floods. I've rescued lost tourists and helped injured spelunkers. But in all my years underground, I'd never felt the kind of primal fear that gripped me in that moment. It was like every cell in my body was screaming at me to run. Instead, I reached into my pocket and touched my grandmother's tobacco pouch. The leather was soft and worn, familiar under my fingers. And somehow, that simple touch helped me stay calm enough to do my job. To start investigating what would become the strangest and most terrifying month of my life. I didn't know it then, but that breathing sound was just the beginning. The caves were changing, and something ancient was stirring in the depths of Carlsbad Caverns. something that had been sleeping for thousands of years, something that was finally awake and hungry. That week, everything started going wrong. It began with the Miller family, Mom, Dad, and their teenage son. They were experienced cavers who had signed up for our advanced tour of the deeper caverns, the kind of tour I usually enjoy leading, because these people understand and respect the caves. I led them through the usual route, pointing out the formations and sharing the history of the caves. Everything was normal until we reached the junction room, a big chamber where 3 tunnels meet. Mrs. Miller was the first to notice it. "Ranger Martinez," she called out, her voice shaky. "Wasn't that tunnel sealed off yesterday?" I turned my flashlight where she was pointing. My heart skipped a beat. She was right. There was now a new tunnel where solid rock had been just the day before. Not just a crack or a small opening, but a perfectly round tunnel big enough for a person to walk through. "Everyone stay here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I walked closer to examine the tunnel. The walls were smooth, almost polished, like something had eaten through the rock. A cold draft leaked from the opening, carrying a smell I'd never encountered before in all my years underground, like wet earth mixed with something metallic. That's when the ground started to shake. Not like a normal earthquake. I'd felt plenty of those. This was more like pulses, rhythmic, deliberate. The Millers huddled together as small rocks fell from the ceiling. "We need to leave. Now." I guided them back the way we came, constantly checking the walls and ceiling. The shaking followed us, growing stronger with each pulse. We made it back to the main cavern just as the really bad tremors started. Later, that day, I called my friend Lisa from the geology department. She brought equipment to measure the tremors. "This isn't normal seismic activity," she said, frowning at her instruments. "These patterns, it's almost like something's moving down there." Over the next few days, more strange things happened. 2 spelunkers went missing in a section of caves we'd explored hundreds of times. Search teams found their equipment scattered near a wall that had somehow moved. The rock face was different, with weird spiral patterns we'd never seen before. The bats started acting strange too. Usually they leave the caves at dusk to hunt, but now they were staying inside, clustered together, squeaking in a way that made the hair on my neck stand up. It was like they were scared of something. One morning, I found Native American artifacts scattered across the main cavern floor. Pottery pieces, arrowheads, things that looked ancient. The weird part, I knew this section of the cave like the back of my hand. These artifacts hadn't been there before. It was like they were pushing up through the rock itself. But the cave paintings were what really scared me. We have some famous ones in the lower chambers, hundreds of years old, showing hunters and animals. I check on them every week. This time, they were different. New figures had appeared, showing something massive moving through the earth, swallowing people whole. The paint looked fresh, still wet to the touch. That night, I stayed late in my office, going through old files, looking for any record of similar incidents. The caves had been here for millions of years. Surely someone else had seen something like this before. As I was reading, the lights flickered, then went out completely. In the darkness, I heard that breathing sound again, closer this time, and something else, a scraping noise like stone moving against stone coming from inside the walls. I grabbed my flashlight and my grandmother's tobacco pouch. The beam showed nothing unusual, but I could feel it. Something was watching me. Something that lived in the rock itself, and it was getting bolder. I needed to understand what we were dealing with. But as I headed home that night, watching the stars disappear behind storm clouds, I had a terrible feeling that whatever it was just getting started. The caves were changing, and we were running out of time to figure out why. I spent the next few days gathering everything I could about the cave's history. My office looked like a tornado had hit it. Maps spread everywhere, old journals piled on my desk, and photos of the new tunnel pinned to my wall. But what really caught my attention was an old leather-bound book I found in the park's archives. It was a journal from 1925, written by a ranger named Thomas Webb. His words made my blood run cold. Something moves in the deep chambers. The rocks shift on their own. 3 men vanished last week. The local tribes won't enter the caves anymore. They say an ancient spirit has awakened. I was reading this when my phone rang. It was Mike, one of our night security guards. Dave, you need to see this. His voice was shaking. The crystal chamber? It's different. I grabbed my gear and headed down. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, and the usual hum of the machinery sounded wrong, like it was fighting against something. Mike met me at the bottom, his face pale in the flashlight beam. "Watch," he said, leading me to the crystal chamber. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. The crystals, they were growing, not over years like they should, but right in front of our eyes. Clear spikes pushing out of the walls like teeth, making a soft crackling sound that echoed through the chamber. Then we heard it, a deep rumble, different from the earlier tremors. It was coming from the new tunnel. "We should check it out," Mike said, but I could hear the fear in his voice. "I'll go," I told him. "You stay here and radio for backup if I'm not back in 20 minutes. I approached the tunnel entrance, one hand on my flashlight, the other clutching my grandmother's tobacco pouch. The smooth walls felt warm to the touch. Rock shouldn't be warm this deep underground. "Guardian of what?" "Sit down, Catherine. It's time you learned the truth about your brother, about all of them." The story he told me made my skin crawl. Long ago, the local tribe had lived in peace with something that lived in these waters, something that wasn't quite human. They called it the Mistwalker. It protected the waters and the people, but demanded a price. Every 25 years, it needed a new guardian to help keep the balance. "The medallion chooses," old Joe said. "It calls to someone who knows these waters, who's lost someone to them. The last guardian was supposed to be your brother." My heart stopped. "Tommy? He found the medallion first, didn't he? But he got scared, tried to throw it back into the sea. That's why the Mistwalker took him." Old Joe leaned forward. "And now it's chosen you instead." Suddenly my radio burst to life with static. Through the noise, I heard Mike's voice. "Catherine, emergency. At Thunderhole. 3 tourists just got pulled in by something in the water." I jumped up, but old Joe grabbed my arm. "Wait, you need to know how to stop it. The Mistwalker's gotten too powerful. It's not just taking guardians anymore, it's taking anyone it can. You have to." But I never heard the rest, because right then every light in town went out at once. In the sudden darkness, I heard that humming again, the same sound from the cave, and it was coming from everywhere. "It's starting," old Joe whispered. I ran to my truck and sped toward Thunderhole. The fog was so thick I could barely see the road, but somehow my medallion's light helped guide the way. It was glowing brighter than ever now, pulsing faster and faster. When I got to Thunderhole, what I saw made me freeze. The waves were impossibly high, but they were moving wrong, like they were reaching up toward the sky. And in the water below, those strange lights were back, moving in circles like a giant whirlpool. 3 of my fellow rangers were already there, trying to throw rescue lines into the water. But the ropes kept snapping, like something was cutting them. "The tourists?" I shouted over the roar of the waves. "Still down there." Ranger Steve pointed at the water. "We saw something pull them under." That's when I saw it clearly for the first. Rising from the waves like a tower of black mist, a figure took shape. It was huge, maybe 30 feet tall, with those same crystal black eyes I'd seen in the cave. As it turned to look at us, I realized I could see right through it. And inside its misty body were dozens of people, frozen like statues, their eyes open and black, and there, right in the middle, was Tommy. The thing spoke, its voice like waves crashing on rocks. "The old bargain is broken. We protected your waters for centuries. Now we take what we want." Ranger Steve raised his flashlight, but the beam went right through the creature. It reached out with an arm made of mist, and before I could shout a warning, Steve was pulled into the air. The fog wrapped around him like a cocoon, and when it cleared, his body fell to the ground, white as paper, eyes turned to black crystal. My medallion was burning now, so hot it felt like it would melt into my skin. And suddenly I understood what I had to do, why it had chosen me. Wyatt had been showing me all those visions. I wasn't just supposed to be the next guardian. I was supposed to be the last one. The Mist Walker turned its empty black eyes on me. "Sister of the Lost One," it said. "Will you join them? Will you join him?" Inside its misty body, Tommy's frozen form reached out toward me, his face trapped in an endless scream. I gripped my medallion tight and stepped toward the edge of the eye.
"Cliff."
"No," I said. "But I will stop you." The creature laughed, a sound like drowning. "You cannot stop the tide, little guardian. The sea remembers, and it is hungry." Behind me, I heard old Joe's truck pulling up. He was shouting something about a cave, the deepest cave where it all began. I knew what I had to do, but as I looked into those black crystal eyes, I wondered if I would survive what came next. And if I didn't, who would protect these waters then? I ran, not away from the monster, but toward the sea caves. Old Joe's words echoed in my head, where it all began. I knew which cave he meant, the deepest one, the one we weren't supposed to talk about, the one that went down under the ocean. Behind me, the Mistwalker moved like a storm cloud sweeping across the water. My fellow ranger Sarah tried to stop me. "Catherine, are you crazy? You can't go in there." "Get everyone away from the water," I told her. "As far as you can. And Sarah, if I don't come back, tell them what happened here." The cave entrance was hardly bigger than a door, hidden behind rocks that were slippery with seaweed. My flashlight showed the way down, 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 steep stone steps carved by people who lived here long ago. The walls were covered in more of those pictures telling a story I could finally understand. The Mistwalker wasn't just one creature. It was many, a whole tribe of beings who lived in the deep water. They'd made a deal with the local people. They would protect the waters, keep the fish plenty and the storms away, if they got to choose a guardian every 25 years. Someone to walk between their world and ours. But something had gone wrong. They'd gotten greedy, started taking more people than the deal allowed, and now they weren't going to stop. The humming got louder as I went deeper. My medallion's light turned from blue to bright white, lighting up the tunnel better than my flashlight. The air got colder, and the steps were getting steeper, but I kept going. Then I heard Tommy's voice. "Kathy, stop!" He was standing there in the tunnel, but not really him. A copy made of mist, just like the thing up above had shown me. "You'll drown down here," Not Tommy said. "Just like I did. Just give us the medallion, join us in the deep." "You're not my brother," I said, my voice shaking. The real Tommy would never give up, never stop fighting. The fake Tommy melted away into mist that slithered toward me like snakes. I ran faster, deeper into the cave. The steps ended at a round chamber with a pool of black water in the middle. Ancient carvings covered the walls, and in the center of the pool stood a stone pillar with a hand-shaped mark on it. The Mistwalker poured into the room like smoke, taking shape again, but smaller this time, human-sized. It looked almost like a person made of dark glass with those same black crystal eyes. "You've come to the beginning," it said, "where the first guardian made the pact. And where I'm going to end it," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. It laughed that horrible, drowning laugh again. "You cannot end what you don't understand. We are the deep, we are the tide, we are eternal." "Then show me," I said, taking off my medallion. "Show me what you showed Tommy." The creature moved closer. Inside its misty body, I could still see all those frozen people, men, women, children, all with black crystal eyes. My brother among them. "You would trade yourself for them?" it asked. "No," I said. "I'm offering you something better. A new deal." I held up the medallion. It was burning white hot now, so bright it hurt to look at. The creature reached for it, and that's when I jumped into the pool. The water was so cold it felt like knives, but I knew what I had to do. The ancient carvings had shown it all. The pillar, the medallion, the price that had to be paid. The Mistwalker screamed and dove in after me. I swam down, down toward the pillar. The creature's misty arms wrapped around me, trying to pull me back. My lungs were burning. Black spots danced in my eyes, but I reached the pillar. Slammed the medallion into that hand-shaped mark. Everything exploded into white light. Welcome, Guardian. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, deep as an earthquake. The ground under my feet softened, trying to pull me down. I grabbed my grandmother's pouch with shaking hands. The voice laughed, a sound like breaking rocks. Your people's magic is weak now, it rumbled. I have slept too long. The earth has changed. Now it's time to change these caves. Change your world. The walls began to move, forming a huge shape. I finally saw what I was facing. A thing made of living rock, bigger than a house, with crystals for eyes and a mouth that could swallow a... This was the Earth Eater, ancient and hungry. They're still alive, I said, looking at the trapped people. Let them go. They feed me, it answered. Their fear makes me stronger. Their nightmares make me real. Soon they'll become part of my tunnels like all the others before them. The chamber shook as it moved closer. Crystals grew around us like teeth. Your grandmother knew me, it said. She helped seal me away. But the old ways are dying. Who remembers? The real power of the sacred smoke now? That's when I remembered Maria's herbs. If I could just reach them. But the ground was pulling me down, stone crawling up my legs like thick mud. The Earth Eater loomed over me, its crystal eyes pulsing. With hungry light, I had one chance to save everyone. One chance to use what my grandmother had given me. But first I had to free myself from the living rock that was trying to make me part of its cave forever. The Earth Eater opened its massive mouth, and I saw the truth. It wasn't just hungry for people. It was hungry for everything. Our world. Our future. And I was the only thing standing in its way. The rock was up to my waist now, pulling me deeper. The Earth Eater's crystal eyes glowed brighter, enjoying my struggle. But it had made one mistake. It was so focused on trapping me, it hadn't noticed my hands were still free. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around my grandmother's tobacco pouch and Maria's herbs. The Earth Eater's massive head moved. Closer, its breath smelling like wet graves. Your grandmother was wise, it rumbled. She knew to fear me, but you came looking for me. I didn't come looking for you, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I came for them. I nodded toward Jenny, Carlos, and the others trapped in the walls. The creature laughed, making crystals rain from the ceiling. They're mine now, soon. They'll forget they were ever human, just like all the others over the centuries. That's when I saw something that gave me hope. Behind the Earth Eater, the blue crystals were growing faster, climbing the walls like ivy. Maria's words came back. To me, crystals can trap it like chains. I had an idea, a crazy one, but it was all I had. You're right, I told it, slowly mixing Maria's herbs with the tobacco. My grandmother did fear you. She taught me to fear you too. Want to know what else she taught me? The creature leaned closer, curious. Perfect. She taught me the old ways. Aren't dead. I struck a match and lit the mixture. Sweet-smelling smoke filled the air. The Earth Eater reared back with a roar that shook the whole cave. The rock holding my legs softened, letting me pull free. The smoke, it screamed. The ancient binding. I ran toward the trapped people, holding the smoking pouch high. Wherever, the smoke touched the walls. The rock turned solid again, losing its muddy flow. The Earth Eater thrashed, its massive body hitting the ceiling, making rocks fall everywhere. Jenny, Carlos, I shouted. The smoke was clearing their minds. I could see awareness coming back to their eyes. The rock around them started to crack. The Earth Eater charged at me, but the smoke made it clumsy. It hit a wall of crystals instead, and that's when everything changed. The blue crystals exploded with light. They grew incredibly fast now, spreading across the creature's body like frost on a window. The Earth Eater screamed again, but this time in fear. No, not again. Not the crystal sleep. I helped Jenny and Carlos break free from the weakened rock, then the others. We watched as the crystals kept growing, trapping the Earth Eater piece by piece. What's happening to it? Jenny asked, her voice hoarse. The same thing that happened before, I said, understanding now. This is how my grandmother's people stopped it. The crystals are its prison. The Earth Eater made one last try to break, free, but the crystals were too strong. They covered it completely, freezing it in place like a statue. Its crystal eyes flickered and went dark. The cave gave one final shudder, then went quiet. The rock walls turned back to normal stone. The bleeding stopped. The new tunnels began to collapse, sealing themselves shut. We got everyone out safely, though how we explained it all in the official report is another story. The lower caves were declared off-limits, and the crystal chamber where the Earth Eater stands frozen is blocked off by cave-ins. But sometimes, late at night when I'm doing my rounds, I swear I can still hear breathing in the deep parts of the cave. And every now and then, I find new crystals growing where they shouldn't be. I keep my grandmother's tobacco pouch with me. I've shown Jenny and Carlos how to make the mixture too, just in case. Because the Earth Eater isn't dead, it's only sleeping. And somehow I know that someday, maybe long after I'm gone, it will wake up again. But when it does, someone will be ready. The old ways aren't dead after all. They're just waiting, like the crystals in the deep cave, for the moment they're needed. Again. For now, though, the caves are quiet. The tourists come and go, never knowing how close they are to the Earth Eater's crystal prison. And every morning I walk the paths, check the walls, and whisper a small thank you to my grandmother for teaching me to believe in things I couldn't see. Because sometimes the old stories are true, and sometimes the monsters in them are real. It's funny how quickly people try to explain away things they can't understand. The official report called it a series of unusual geological events. The missing people were found. That's all anyone seemed to care about. Life at Carlsbad Caverns went back to normal, almost. I'm training new rangers now. Jenny and Carlos help me. We don't tell the whole story, but we teach them the important things. Which areas to watch, what signs to look for, how to make the sacred tobacco mixture. Just in case. The tourists still come and go. They take pictures of the stalactites, laugh, the bats, and never notice how some of us rangers always keep one hand close to our tobacco pouches. They don't see how we check the walls each morning for signs of bleeding or new crystals. Last week, a little girl on my tour asked why some areas were blocked off. I told her it was for safety reasons. She looked at me with serious eyes and said, "The caves are breathing, I can hear them. Kids notice things adults try to ignore." I gave her parents one of my cards, told them to call me if she ever wants to be a ranger. We need people who can hear what the caves are trying to tell us. The crystal chamber where the Earth Eater sleeps is still sealed off. Sometimes I go down there alone, late at night, just to check. The creature stands frozen in its crystal prison, a giant statue in the darkness, but the crystals around it keep growing, spreading like blue ice across the walls. Maria visits sometimes. She says the Earth Eater is dreaming. In its dreams, it reaches out, tries to influence things. That's why the bats still act strange on some nights. Why tourists sometimes say they hear whispers in the deep tunnels. Why the park's seismograph draws odd patterns when no one's watching. I found new handprints in the rock last month. Old ones, pushing out from deep inside the stone. They looked hundreds of years old. The Earth Eater's prisoners from long ago, still trying to escape. I covered them with warning signs, added them to my secret map of things we need to watch. Jenny and Carlos have nightmares sometimes. They don't remember everything that happened when they were trapped in the walls, but what they do remember haunts them. The Earth Eater showed them things, other worlds inside the rock, ancient cities buried deep in the earth, creatures that make it look small in comparison. I dream too. In my dreams, I see the crystal prison cracking. I hear my grandmother's voice warning me that nothing sleeps forever. I wake up checking my tobacco pouch, making sure it's still there. Yesterday, a new ranger found something strange. Cave paintings we'd never seen before, hidden in a back tunnel. They showed the Earth Eater trapped in crystals, but also showed it breaking free. Below the paintings were words in an ancient language. Maria translated them for me. It sleeps, it dreams, it waits. So we keep watch. We check the crystals. We listen to the caves. And we remember that sometimes the oldest stories are warnings. passed down through time by people who learned the hard way that monsters are real. Because deep in the earth, in its crystal prison, the Earth Eater is dreaming of freedom. And someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 100 years, those dreams might come true. But when that day comes, we'll be ready. The old ways aren't forgotten anymore. They're alive and growing like the blue crystals in the deep caves, waiting for the moment they're needed again. Until then, I walk the caves, teach the new rangers, and keep my grandmother's tobacco pouch close. Because that's what guardians do. We watch, we wait, we remember, and most importantly, we listen to what the caves are trying to tell us.